Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Here's what's making news right now.
I've actually been coming for several years. It's been a long 2-3 years during COVID, and it's great to come out and celebrate.
This is an excellent budget. This is a prudent budget.
It could have been worse, and so that's a bit of a backhanded compliment.
The fund is timely. It's for organizations such as ourselves that just are sliding through the pandemic. This would provide an opportunity for us to prepare our space to start to invite people back in.
Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight across the border in Detroit, where the Tigers played and won their home opening game this afternoon against the Chicago White Sox 5-4. Now, normally it's an annual tradition for many Windsorites to cross the border and take part in the action, but that's been on a pandemic-induced pause for the last couple of years. But as Jennifer LaGrassa reports, that tradition is now back in full swing.
Take me out to a Detroit Tigers baseball game. That's what many of the Windsorites here have been asking for the last 2 years. And today, they could finally cross the border to watch the team's home opener against the Chicago White Sox.
It's just been several years, of not being able to. I've come here every year. It's just the camaraderie of the people. It's nice to be around people. Get to see a lot of Windsorites. Good to be out.
I grew up coming over here my whole life, so I'm kind of, I couldn't live without this aspect. And COVID happening, really put a damper on that. So to be able to experience it again, it's an absolute must.
And honestly, it was so hard not being able to come over for a long time. I couldn't imagine life without it. It's fantastic.
Are the Tigers going to win today?
They always win on opening day. I can't, or at least I remember they winning every time. But if they win, they win. If they lose, they lose. But it's just a great day regardless.
Giant baseball fan, giant Tigers fan, and it's also just the atmosphere of everything going to it. Like everybody getting together, having fun, like kind of celebrating. As a joke, I always say Happy New Year when it's opening day. So I go around wishing Happy New Year to everybody because I love baseball. And this is kind of just like the kickoff party for the season.
The Liberal government tabled its federal budget yesterday, giving us a sense of how tax dollars will be spent this year. There are some key areas with big promises for Windsor-Essex. For more, let's go to Chris Ensing, who's been tracking this, and he joins us live now in studio. Chris, what stands out to you?
Yeah, Kat, it's a big budget that people in the auto industry say should build off of the buzz of that new battery plant coming to Windsor, but it might have fallen short. We're going to start here with Canada's plan to get you in an electric vehicle. They're spending $1.7 billion to extend the current incentives to buy a zero-emission vehicle. The budget also calling for more vehicles to be added to that package, SUVs, trucks, vans, those types of things. They're also going to spend $500 million for charging stations in urban and commercial areas. But the head of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association says that this misses the mark. He wanted to see more money for charging stations, including investments to install charging stations in your house or in an apartment building. And that incentive that we mentioned, well, he wants to see that triple. The most that you can get is $5,000 through that federal program. He wanted that to sit around $15,000.
And Chris, there was also a mention of semiconductors in the budget, but not a lot of money.
Yeah, that's right, Kat. Those pesky little chips that keep shutting down the assembly plant and the ripple effects thereafter, it didn't seem like much when I first found it in the budget. Canada spending $45 million in cash over 4 years, but it's a win, according to an industry player I spoke with. The vice chair of Canada's Semiconductor Council saying that this is a big moment, a signal to the world that Canada is entering the semiconductor game. Melissa Chi helps grow companies that build semiconductors in Canada. She works in the Greater Toronto area. The shortage, it's shut down the Windsor assembly plant for weeks at a time. Now, she says this won't solve that, but by being its own part of the budget, it signals a shift in how the government is looking at the problem. She sees it as less of a focus on getting a better supply globally to creating our own supply in Canada. It just won't happen anytime soon.
Another urgent issue that we've heard needs help, the temporary foreign workers program. Anything of note there?
A few things there, Kat. We saw how the pandemic infected farm workers at a rate really only rivaled by long-term care. Now, people who come to work in Canada, they died, they got sick, they weren't able to isolate properly through this program. There were calls to reform it, and a scathing report by the Federal Auditor General that said that the inspection process of where these workers lived Well, that was flawed. In this budget, two things for that. Close to $30 million to help reduce red tape for employers that meet the highest standards of the program. Now, there's a promise for more details on that later. That's all we know right now. The last thing, more than $10 million this year to help improve inspections and hold employers accountable. But the union who represents inspectors told me that's not enough, saying, quote, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what's required based on the workload that our members already face. Now, Kat, there's also some details about housing that's worth mentioning as well. They want to create a home buyer's bill of rights, aiming to end blind bidding wars and waiving house inspections, the ability to waive those. But that's something that still needs to be worked out with provinces and territories. So that could take some time, especially here in Ontario, since it's an election year. Kat.
Thanks for diving into this, Chris. CBC's Chris Ensing live in studio for us tonight. And local MPs are reacting to the budget, some applauding key items that would benefit the region, others are more critical.
The focus is on affordability. The focus is on investing in Canadians, investing in people. And at the same time, it's about job growth. It's about making sure we're building the economy and building jobs. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is the dental plan. This is going to be, again, another transformative policy investment for our community, especially when you consider that, in speaking with the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit, we know that we have some of the highest rates of cavities in our children, for example.
There's a couple things that I liked is that there is some really good stuff on the environment that if I can get my National Urban Park bill passed, that we can tap in for a whole bunch of redevelopment and ecotourism and also development of protection of green spaced areas. Another really big one is the increase of money of $1.7 billion for electric vehicle incentives. That's crucial because we just got the battery plant, so there'll be EV incentives that'll be continued for consumers in Canada, which will really help us here locally.
I am disappointed, and I think Canadians are disappointed in one feature, in that overall, this doesn't lead us to a path back to balance. There's a number of good measures in here, a number of measures that are worthy of support, and there's a bunch of major initiatives that are started upon. But what everyday Canadians are experiencing, what I'm hearing, is that the cost of living being driven by inflation is what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And that's one area where we were looking for a path to bring some control and some fiscal responsibility.
And Conservative MP for Essex, Chris Lewis, issued a statement today, and he says the budget is irresponsible and that it fails to control spending and inflation. The tourism sector in southwestern Ontario is getting a boost. The federal government is making $7 million in grants available from a tourism relief fund. But as Dale Molnar reports, to tap into that money, eligible businesses will have to act fast.
Businesses, BIAs, municipalities, and others in the tourism sector can apply for grants of up to $100,000. The money can be used for things like upgrading washrooms, signage, websites, and improving Wi-Fi reception.
If you wanted to put solar panels on your roof, that would be eligible for it too. Trail experiences, product and program development. So there are a number of different opportunities here for the tourism and hospitality industry to take hold of and embrace.
It can't, however, be used for advertising and marketing. The money is being made available to help the tourism sector recover from the pandemic.
Members of ArtSite would remember these lockers, being inside in the basement.
The executive director of ArtSite says they need a new accessible washroom, and since the money can be used for art installations, he says they will be applying for a grant.
I think one of the things that we learned throughout the pandemic is that the art of the life of the art institution is not just going to exist inside the gallery anymore. So if we have an opportunity to go out into the community, build community by participating in community arts installations, that's a home run for us. That's a home run for arts organizations across the region.
The program starts next Tuesday, but the applications have to be in by May 15th, something the CEO of Tourism Windsor-Essex says is a tight turnaround.
First of all, communicating that this funding envelope is available. People are struggling. There's staff shortages. It's very difficult for a lot of our entrepreneurs and businesses to put together an application. There's going to be webinars that Ontario Southwest is going to produce to help them do that. So yes, it can be done.
The City of Windsor is looking at applying for the grants. It is assessing timelines, eligibility, and submission requirements. The Executive Director of Recreation and Culture says there will be an internal meeting to discuss it next week. Restaurants and hotels are not eligible for this funding unless they can prove that they offer some unique tourism experience. Other funding options are available to them. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
The latest jobs numbers came out today. For Windsor, it's not good news. For our unemployment rate for March was at 8.3%, the highest rate among major cities in Canada. However, a better picture for Canada as a whole. Nationally, the unemployment rate has dropped to below pre-pandemic levels. In March, the jobless rate dipped to 5.3% with the addition of more than 72,000 positions. The increase in the number of jobs came in below expectations, but it was enough to drop unemployment to the lowest rate on record. The job gains were centered in Ontario and Quebec and were driven by older women and middle-aged men returning to the workforce. Both manufacturing and the service sectors saw increases. A missile attack on a train station in Ukraine has killed at least 50 people. Dozens are injured. And it's led to new accusations Russia is targeting civilians. And it comes as Ukraine gets more help from neighboring countries. CBC's Katie Simpson has the details.
Kramatorsk has one of eastern Ukraine's busiest train stations. Thousands have used this location to start their journey to safety, including these evacuees who made it out just yesterday. Some 4,000 people were at the station at the time of the attack. Unverified footage posted on Twitter appears to show survivors running for cover. The injured scream for help. Bodies of the dead and their suitcases now strewn across the platform. There were many killed and injured here, says this man. The cars were still on fire when he arrived. It was hell on earth, he says. Among the dozens of dead, several children. Bloodied belongings of little ones are left behind, along with a message from Russia spray painted on the side of the missile. For the children, it says. During an address to Finnish lawmakers, Ukraine's president called this yet another direct attack on civilians. Russian forces hit an ordinary train station, ordinary people. There were no military personnel there, he says. A Kremlin spokesperson denied Russia is responsible for the attack, a claim widely denounced as a lie. Ukraine is about to get some added protection. Slovakia is supplying it with a new air defense system, while the U.S. is promising to backfill Slovakia. The more help, the better, from the perspective of these young Ukrainian men. They've been making Molotov cocktails to help with the war effort and are expecting to be called to the front lines any day now, insisting they're not scared. We feel confident in the future and the future of our country, he says. Russia is increasing its attacks on the south and east as it tries to regroup after losing thousands of soldiers in its failed attempt to capture the capital. That is why people in the south and east are being urged to get out while they can, if they can. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Lviv.
Pope Francis has said he's coming to Canada to issue an apology for the Catholic Church's role in residential schools. Where that will happen is being debated, and there are several sites being considered. But survivors agree they should have the final say. CBC's Jason Warwick reports.
AJ Felix and Wendell Starblanket walked the grounds of the Lebret Indian Industrial Residential School in southern Saskatchewan. For more than a century, thousands of Indigenous children were forced to attend this Catholic-run institution. These two men among them.
Indian affairs, the church.
Indian agent come in?
Yeah.
The priests, the ministers
They told my daddy he was going to go to jail if we didn't come.
That's why here is where they want Pope Francis to visit and to say sorry for the church's actions on Canadian soil. Last week, the Pope promised to do just that as early as July.
It would be good to have the apology in the heart of the country. It would be good, and this is it.
But it's just one of many suggested locations for the Pope's apology. Like the Kamloops Indian Residential School, where last year the local First Nations leaders identified more than 200 possible unmarked burial sites of children. The Cowessess First Nation in southern Saskatchewan, where 751 possible unmarked graves have been found near another residential school. And the Wanuskewin Heritage Park, just outside Saskatoon, a gathering place for thousands of years. While Pope Francis himself told delegates he could come during the annual Catholic pilgrimage to Lac St. Anne near Edmonton. But Indigenous people agree on one thing.
For all of this to resonate with the survivors and allow us to move forward, the survivors themselves have to feel that they're a fundamental part of this historic process.
The Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops says meaningful consultations are underway with Indigenous people. They say they know that an apology is just words, and they have to take action on compensation and records. As for Felix and Starblanket, they say they're willing to open their hearts to the church one last time.
Let's say, yes, mistakes were made. Yes, people got hurt. And yes, let's heal. Let's heal together.
They just hope this won't be yet another broken promise. Jason Warwick, CBC News, Saskatoon.
2 of the 4 men charged with conspiracy to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020 have been acquitted today. Daniel Harris and Brandon Caserta were acquitted, while the jurors couldn't agree on verdicts for Adam Fox and Barry Croft Jr. Prosecutors described Fox as a ringleader of an anti-government group. Now, during the case, prosecutors argued the men were motivated by fury at the Democrats' tough COVID-19 restrictions early in the pandemic. For 5 years, CBC Marketplace has investigated phone scams targeting Canadians. The team even tracked down some of the call centers in India and revealed how money was stolen from victims and funneled overseas. In the wake of their findings, the RCMP launched Project Octavia to crack down on the fraudsters. David Common reports that the task force has been disbanded, even though scam calls have not stopped.
Overseas scam centers like this often rely on money mules in Canada to funnel proceeds of crime from victims to kingpins.
You're under arrest for fraud.
Over 3 years, the RCMP arrested nearly a dozen alleged money mules in Canada. But since then, the allegations remain unproven for most because not one has made it to trial.
It's crazy. It's really crazy.
Scammers took control of Monique LaFrance's computer, withdrawing from her line of credit.
So almost $200,000.
Yeah, almost $200,000. Yeah, I know. It's a crazy thing.
Some of it sent in cash to multiple addresses, including courier drop locations and this workplace.
Abhinav Bector worked there. He worked at that location you're at.
An employee signed for the package and was later charged with fraud and money laundering. We caught up with that man, Abhinav Bector.
You were involved in a scam. I'm just wondering if you would say anything to the victims.
Nothing.
Bector ultimately took a no-jail deal, pleading guilty only to possession of the proceeds of crime and paying restitution. The Mounties say the investigation continues, but a senior RCMP source emails to tell us that's not true.
What can you tell us about the RCMP's role in tackling financial crime? It plays no role in tackling phone scams.
You are sending a message that Canada doesn't care about this kind of crime.
Now, the unit which made all of those arrests has been quietly disbanded, even as the calls continue and victims lose their savings. David Common, CBC News, Toronto.
You can tune in tonight for Marketplace's 1-hour season finale and more on this story. Also, find out how good guy hackers are fighting back against phone scammers and helping prevent vulnerable Canadians from falling prey. That's at 8 p.m. on CBC TV and on CBC Gem. And let's take a live look outside there. We've had some sprinkles of showers today and that chance of rain and possibly flurries. We're going to have that into tomorrow. We'll take a look at your weather right after the break. cold and gloomy outside today. Here's Johanna Wagstaff with a look at the days ahead.
We'll get ready for more wild weather in the forecast for Windsor. You're right on the boundary between warm thunderstorm air that we saw earlier today and some flurries that will be coming for your weekend forecast. Let me take you through the big picture, starting with the satellite and radar. This big low pressure system has rolled in from the west. That counterclockwise flow is bringing down those northwesterly winds. Windsor, though, you're going to see that in the next 24 hours. I know you'll be getting those pop-up thunderstorms and downpours sliding in from the northwest. That will be your story for a few more hours, but as I take you through the early morning hours, we're going to trade that for some cold air and the possibility of some flurries. It's really a mixed bag for Windsor as I take you through the next 24, 48 hours, but there will be some sunshine. This low pressure system tracks east quite quickly, so unsettled weather tonight and through the start of your Saturday, but by the time we get to Sunday, look at that. The showers all moving towards eastern Ontario and Windsor, all the way up to Sarnia, almost a cloudless sky as we head into Sunday. And check out how that times out over the long-range forecast. So definitely watch for some cooler weather Saturday morning. Wind chills will be in the -8 range. We're actually looking at winds Saturday morning to come in at around 60 kilometers per hour. Nice clear out for Sunday, though, and I think we'll see some sunshine as well. Southwestern Ontario, you are getting clipped with that little system that will bring a mainly cloudy Monday, I think. Temperatures really bumping up. It'll be quite the contrast between Windsor and up towards Toronto. They won't be quite in the warm air mass that you will be in. Everyone will share in it on Tuesday. So a couple nice days there. And you stay in that warm pocket for early next week as well. Your temperatures will be a good 4 to 5 degrees warmer than Toronto, but it'll come with some showers. Very much a typical April forecast, I must say.
A look now at international weather. Some destructive weather in southeastern Australia. Floods triggered by heavy rains are forcing hundreds of residents to leave their homes.
Our communities are flood fatigued. We have had months now of a rain event after another, constant rain, flooding, of course, over that time.
Many parts of New South Wales saw more than a month's worth of rainfall in a matter of a few hours. It caused rivers to burst their banks with floodwaters inundating roads and entire neighborhoods. Police say a man was found dead after his vehicle was swept away in southwest Sydney. The rain has petered out in most places, but officials warn that water levels in rivers will continue to rise for some time. So the evacuation orders remain in place while thousands of people wait to return home. For the past 6 weeks now, Australia's east coast has been battered by 3 separate wild weather events. And coming up, we will turn to some lighter stories, and we'll tell you about a robot that is ripe for the job. Stay with us. It may seem like a small win in the face of the global challenge of wildlife trafficking, but in the central eastern region of Colombia this week, more than 160 critters got their break. 15 different species, ranging from a leopard to turtles, anteaters, and even a toucan, were released after being nurtured back to health. But not all of them got to walk their way to freedom. Some, like this anaconda, had to slither off into the safety of the jungle. The country's environmental authority says more than 1,200 animals were released back into the wild last year alone. There are many robots in Japan working in factories and restaurants, and they may soon be joined by a robot capable of peeling a banana. But don't count on this guy to help you prepare the fruit bowl at your next party. He takes 3 minutes to execute this task and is only successful about 57% of the time. But the introduction of this industrious fella could point to a future where machines complete tasks more complex than moving metal parts or bringing coffee to cafe patrons. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thank you so much for watching and have a great weekend.